Wells, so good to be chatting with you this morning. You guys have launched some really neat stuff that a lot of people have been asking me about. And so I want to dive in and get to know more about you and July, the company that you're building and your backstory, and then talk a little bit about AI from a big picture perspective. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Grant. Excited to chat more about July and more about AI and all that.
Wells, obviously we've known each other for a bit. You're a USC Trojan like myself, and we connected about entrepreneurship, and I've been following along with your company, July. But I wanted to start off by just learning a little bit more about your journey, your entrepreneurial journey, what led to you building this business, which is now New York based. But I know you've jumped around the US a little bit. So maybe you can start by just telling us a little bit about your entrepreneurial foundation.
Sure. Yeah, I am from originally a small suburb outside of Chicago. My dad is also a founder. He built a boutique staffing agency. My mom also was a founder herself. She built a translation company. And so the sort of idea of entrepreneurship has always been a very great interest to me. I think for a while I didn't really know what that looked like or what it actually meant. But it was definitely something that I tried to pursue in high school with various projects or various building projects. One of my oldest friends and I, back when we were in high school, we used to build electric skateboards and then sell them to our friends. So that was sort of my first experience with what it meant, with what it looked like to try and build something that other people could get their hands on. And that was sort of the inspiration and the sort of background behind why I wanted to go to USC, because they had a really great program there that was centered around entrepreneurship and sort of those different kinds of various fields of study.
So I'd love to have you just give us your spiel about what the program is at USC. Obviously, I'm aware of it, but also how that shaped the types of businesses that you were interested in working on.
Yeah, so back in 2016, I had applied to USC to a new program that had just been started by Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre. It's called the Iovine Academy. And the premise of the program was to study the intersection of the three fields of arts, tech, and business. So fine arts and graphic design, engineering and computer science, and business and entrepreneurship, which what I felt at the time was sort of the perfect consolidation of that entrepreneurship that I was looking for, sort of that building that I loved through the various projects that I was working on. And it just felt like the perfect program for sort of the career that I wanted to go down. And when I went to USC, the way that I had sort of structured my classes was I ended up overloading my units for the first 2 years so that I could get more real world experience alongside the program in my upperclassmen years. And that's what actually led to my first job in sort of the creator economy space, and then what eventually led to the beginnings of July.
So tell us a little bit about what that job was, because I know that you didn't spend time in a vacuum and then think of this. Like you actually had your sleeves rolled up. So tell us a little bit about what led to what you're working on right now.
Totally. So I guess a little bit more background on sort of the entrepreneurship desire. The reason I structured my classes so that I could get more real world experience and eventually ideally find some sort of problem in industry that I could then build a company around rather than just going out to start a company. I felt like that always that never led to success in sort of the case studies that I had looked into. And so going into my junior year, I ended up getting a job as an entrepreneur in residence for a product incubator that was set out to build direct to consumer brands around content creators. This is back in 2018. It was still somewhat of a novel idea. Now, tons of creators, almost all of them that are large, have these different businesses. But at that time, I was brought on to sit with these large creators and sort of bring their ideas from concept to reality. The reason I was brought on was because of the program that I was in and sort of my background and desire to be sort of an entrepreneur, as well as my background in the product design and space, graphic design space along those lines. And so anyway, I ended up having this sort of unfair access to these larger content creators as I was helping them bring their ideas to life. And I literally would sit with them, draw up the designs, get it approved, and then contact manufacturers overseas, find the right products, source that into the United States, put it into warehouses, and then work with that creator to actually push that product, right? To work with their audiences and sort of the creator networks around them. And so, like I mentioned, I had this unfair access to these larger creators as well as their networks around them. And being out in LA, also many of these creators were sort of my age at the time. I ended up making a lot of really, really great friends. And I think because I was introduced to some of these up and coming creators from their business mentors, from the larger creators we were working with, a lot of them asked if I could help them out with managing their own businesses. And what that primarily looked like was, hey, Wells, will you help me look over a contract, or help me negotiate a deal, or help me get in contact with someone at Adidas? I'd love to work with them. Essentially operating as their pseudo manager. And what we just quickly came to realize is all these creators were struggling with the exact same issue, which is, how can I monetize this? I love creating content, but it costs a lot of money, and how can I make this a legitimate business? And the answer to that question was brand partnerships. Sponsored content still accounts for the majority of any creator's business, and the process behind those deals and that sort of life cycle is just an absolute nightmare to navigate. And the only real way to automate that is to bring on someone like myself or a manager and give up a large piece of your business. So that was sort of the original problem that we started to tackle, is how can we enable creators to more effectively manage themselves and manage their own businesses at an early stage.
Got it. So you basically put that hat on. Were you thinking of becoming a manager at any time, or were you kind of looking at this as just an opportunity to learn from doing and then maybe solve some of the pain points?
So it actually started as I was helping my creator friends sort of acting and operating as a pseudo manager, and ended up building a no code tool for myself and for my friends to make my life a little bit easier. And that was the original sort of software that we built out for July. It was this tool that I had made for myself to solve this problem. I wasn't taking payment for my friends because I was helping on sort of just a pro bono basis, and ended up taking up too much of my time. So I was like, okay, here's what I built. You guys are smart enough to try it out for yourself, see what that looks like. And the initial feedback was like, oh my gosh, can my friends start to use this tool? And so that was, again, that initial flywheel of, okay, we have this sort of product and solution, and maybe we can sort of make it available to a larger audience.
Yeah. So you built this no code tool, not hard tech, but something that did allow you to automate some things. I know that you have since then gone and raised a good chunk of cash from some really interesting investors. And so what was the pitch that you took to some of those folks and grander vision that we're seeing now?
Yeah, the pitch is that there is a huge opportunity to automate a lot of this inherently manual and subjective and outdated work that goes on behind the brand partnership process. A lot of creators are trying to diversify their revenue streams, and many different ways to make money are popping up as a content creator. But still, the majority of what a creator does, the way that they fund that, is through sponsored content, branded partnerships, and anything that's where brands are paying creators for their audience. And the workload behind that is still incredibly manual. And so the original pitch was obviously a lot to it, but sort of the essence of it is that there's this incredibly robust and sort of terribly built out structure on how billions of dollars flow through these platforms, these email chains, these sort of, different subsets of software. And all of that could be simplified and sort of streamlined as well as automated. That is what we are tackling and trying to do.
Got it. So there's this massive coordination problem and communication problem that you started scratching at the surface of that, but you raised some money from. I know that there's some interesting investors. So who jumped into the fray to back you on this venture?
Yeah, so ironically, in July of last year, the name of the company is July, we ended up closing our pre-seed, which was led by Alexis Ohanian, former founder of Reddit and current founder of Venture Fund 776, and then a couple other really awesome angels on both the creator front as well as sort of the former founder front. And so that was sort of who led our round and what made us able to continue to pursue our vision.
Cool. So let's shift gears now to what has, you guys have come a long way in terms of building out this suite of tools and products. And one of the tools in particular really has stood out, an AI tool that the company built focused on contract analysis and evaluation. So that definitely seems much more geared towards this kind of hard tech vision here of automating a bunch of things, going down to something that typically someone would have had to spend $500 an hour just to get some feedback on a contract or more. So tell me a little bit about that tool in particular, and then how you're thinking about similar types of functionality bleeding into other areas of the business.
Yeah, so to provide just like slightly more overarching context as far as the July tool set and what it is that we started with and sort of branching into the tools that we're talking about now. We started by helping creators source more deals. The pain point was in finding, organizing, and managing those deals. We started with helping them find more deals, and obviously then began to build out the tool set. Okay, now I have a deal. What are the pain points there? How do I then solve those problems and streamline that process? And one of the biggest things that would come up for us and for our creators is every different business when working on one of these projects sends over their own legal contract for the creator to review and sign. And like you mentioned, obviously, it can be very expensive to have legal counsel. The software that we provide is not legal advice, but what it is that we ended up building was a sort of ChatGPT powered AI summarizer where a creator influencer can upload any contract that they might receive. And what we can do is we can pull out the deal terms, summarize them for them, and then they can ask any question about the contract to our software so that if they have something that they're confused on or want to get clarification on the deal terms, they can go ahead and just ask a little chatbot and it will summarize it for them.
Are there other areas of the suite that you're building that already have incorporated some form of AI or ChatGPT integration, or is that kind of more forward looking?
Yeah, so also, like I mentioned, sort of the original place that we started was helping creators source more deals. The way that we do that is we match them and show them a dashboard of businesses that are already working with creators just like them for them to automate the outreach to. With that in mind, we've also built out different sort of AI integrations to help them write the perfect pitch with the highest converting information based on the data we have, very nicely tailored prompt and response based on the information about you and the information about the business, just to make sure that the creator's experience is as low lift and as high impact as possible when they're trying to source these deals as well as manage them.
Mm-hmm. So rewinding back to what got you into this was you putting on that pseudo manager cap, as you mentioned, and helping to solve some of these pain points for creators that you had in your network. And obviously there's a pretty large industry of talent managers and agents who are doing this work on behalf of creators, influencers, actors, et cetera, et cetera. But the more sophisticated that these automations get, the more they kind of replace some of the work that managers are doing. I think one of the big scary narratives about AI is that this is coming to replace people's jobs, take their jobs away. What do you think that means for the creator economy, for the talent industry in general? Like, do you view July as a tool set that comes in and means that a creator no longer needs to work with an agent, or does this augment that work, and how does it evolve the role of a manager or an agent?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think the answer very much depends on the creator that we're talking about and sort of what their goals are and what stage they're in. If you are a very small up and coming creator that's just getting started and thinks that you want representation because it'll make you sort of, you know what I mean, more efficient or give you that prestige of having someone represent you, I think you're probably better off doing more of the work on your own, using tools like July to make your workflows much more efficient, and then sort of building up your business as far as you can until you're ready to bring on an actually incredibly talented, qualified manager. And I think that goes hand in hand with sort of anything else in the industry where I think the best of the best will continue to become more efficient with the tools that they have at their disposal. Something like July, we also work very well with managers and can kind of superpower them to not only be able to service 15 of the top talent that they work with, but maybe double those numbers or even triple those numbers, depending on how much of sort of the mundane and automatable tasks that we can sort of take off their plate with our software. So I think AI as a whole is definitely not going to take jobs or remove people from the workforce. It'll just make those that are doing very well, make them far more efficient than what they're currently capable of because they can pass off a lot of the mundane to software that's just infinite.
Got it. So just like the AI contract tool makes it possible for a group of creators and talent who are getting contracts sent to them, it makes it possible for them to actually better understand and deal with those contracts because they wouldn't have paid a lawyer previously. And so it's kind of extending this form of service to a much longer tail of the creator economy, but for those people who are already represented by a manager, that manager maybe they can actually serve a larger roster of creators so they can welcome more creators into this kind of managed group, or they can be more creative with the work that they're doing and do things like you worked on when you were at USC still, with the incubating of brands and a lot of the much more complex and nuanced and multidimensional problems that creators are facing and opportunities that they have.
Yeah, I think a great example is we work with a number of different managers who are already working with top talent, who are already pitching their talent to as many people as possible. However, they're able to use July to just extend themselves even further. They can now pitch an extra 100 brands or 150 brands per week. They can also automate the responses and sort of make sure that they are doing the best possible job for the creators that they work with. So it's not replacing them as the manager, it's just making already great talent that much more efficient.
So obviously these tools are already live and being used in the wild by managers, by talent, and anyone who's listening to this interview can just go to withjuly.com to check those out. But I know that you have some big audacious ideas about where the product heads after this. You don't have to tip your hand too much, but what are some of those areas that you think still can benefit from more streamlined workflows and automation, and how are you, now that you have more resources and more actual users who are feeding their problems to you, where does this lead July as a company in the next year or so? What is the company and product going to look like?
Yeah, I think we're definitely in a very interesting time in both the creator space in general, as well as all of the startups that are trying to tackle these various problems. I think what we understand better than all the other startups that are out there is we're trying to meet creators where they're actually at and where the problems, and trying to solve the problems that they're actually facing. Tons of the great creator tools that are out there, they're helping creators either receive payments or get content approved. But what we've determined is that's really not where creators are struggling. Where they're actually struggling is on the communication, organizing, and sourcing of brand partnerships. And that all falls down to the communication side of things. So where we're focusing our next sort of product and where we're headed in the near future is we built a bunch of these really, really wonderful sort of independent tools that can compete with other invoicing tools that are out there, that can compete with other discovery tools that are out there. But where sort of July becomes really, really exciting is we're working on now sort of almost like the cornerstone or the back end that's tying it all together. And we believe, again, that takes place on the communication side of things. So email, text messages, DMs, trying to streamline where these deals are actually happening.
I want to shift the conversation now to, even zooming out a bit more on this space. And, we've had some conversations already at Amid with, I would say, more seasoned, older entrepreneurs who have been in tech for a long time. And it's really exciting to see folks like yourself who, very much digital native, right? You didn't know a world in your kind of conscious mind prior to Facebook. You probably had smartphones, if not in your pocket, then in the pockets of your classmates when you were in school pretty early on. And so it's interesting to see your generation kind of building technology products because you have such a natural connection to the internet and to tech. But I think that what we're looking at now is this new turning point with AI, and in 10 years, in 20 years, there will be this like AI native population of entrepreneurs and of creators and builders. But I would say you and your peers are the closest thing we've got right now to people who are, still young, still kind of, seeing things through that youthful lens. So I'm super curious how you are using other AI tools, what those tools are, how some of your team members or friends or other entrepreneurial peers that are younger are reacting to this advent of AI, and how can other people learn from that?
I think that AI is just going to continue to bring down barriers of entry to any field or any service or anything that someone wants to do, right? For example, a great example is what we use every day in both our product and both our like engineering teams is using like ChatGPT to help our engineers code, to help our designers get ideas on Midjourney for designs, or to, help our marketing people use ChatGPT to write copy. It just makes it so much easier for people to get just like a bare base of ideas and then take those ideas to the next level. And so I think that as we continue to expand with the tool sets and more people integrate these different AI features or wrappers into what it is that they're building, into the products that they use in their day-to-day lives, it's just going to be create higher quality, I think, pretty much everything, right? Like there are now developers that can build without truly being studied in code. And they're not great. They're not going to go get software engineering jobs. But someone like me who has a very limited background in computer science can use ChatGPT to like prototype something to show our engineering team what it is that I'm talking about. And so I think this new generation that is going to be AI native will have all of those skill sets from such an earlier age. And so even then, the sort of differentiation between good and bad or great and insanely good will be sort of the creativity and the different kinds of ways that people are able to implement those skill sets rather than the ability to implement those skill sets. It's how they think of it and how they use the tools to make sure that they can do whatever they want. It's going to be resting solely on the ideas that they have and the creativity that they can bring.
Well, it's good to hear that insight. It's very an optimistic take. There's very much of a very loud narratives, both on the utopian and dystopian side of our AI future. Sounds like
Totally.
you're pretty grounded on that utopian side, but are you concerned at all about these tools in terms of impact to jobs and potentially worse, some form of dire impact to humanity?
I mean, I think that there's going to be crazy implications, especially in the early days, with things like deepfakes or just in general copying of IP that's out there, especially from my lens on the creator world. It's so easy to, you know what I mean, make a video using someone else's now voice and face. So I think that there will be some definitely maybe harmful applications in the near term. I think, however, the defense against those things will also continue to rise. And so my goal and what I hope for is that it'll end up in a very positive context where we use these tools to mitigate the annoying tasks that we don't want to do and to sort of emphasize our ability to do the things that we do best and to use, again, emphasize the creativity rather than sort of the execution, because much of the execution can be automated in a lot of different ways. And again, I also don't think that that means people losing jobs. I think that means jobs can continue to adapt and develop based on the new way that we tackle problems and how we solve the things around us.
Awesome, Wells. Well, it's been really a pleasure chatting with you. I want to allow you to leave a message with anyone who's watching still just about July and any needs or things that you're looking for right now.
Yeah, July as a company is growing. If you listening in or watching are a software engineer and want to get involved, please feel free to reach out to us on our website. There's a link to apply. And then any sort of up and coming creator, large creator, any business that wants to work with creators, anything that is involved in the creator space, please take a look at our website and come check us out. We'd be happy to help out. And that's what we do all day. We sort of enable creators to grow their businesses and we help businesses grow their sales and revenue by working with creators all across the world. So stop on by, don't be a stranger, and reach out.
Thanks a lot, Wells. Take care.
Thanks, Ryan. Bye.
Bye.